Travis Wayne Goodsell. So we've been told, and the scriptures tell, that we are in the latter days. Finally, after all this time. And so the big question on all of your minds, I'm assuming, is what would you do or say when you see your Christ? I'll leave that up to you, whether you're just going to fall at his feet and weep, or if you're going to give him a big old hug, or if you've got a billion questions to ask. You already have it in your mind, I'm assuming, that what you would do and what you would say. And maybe you even think that you won't even get access to him. That he'll be like the presidents of the church, or the prophets of the church, who are at a distance at the pulpit of the conference center, and so that you'll only see him on screen or at a distance. You'll never actually get to be up close and personal. But regardless, are you sure that you have the right Christ? Is your understanding of who Christ is the correct one? Kind of important, because when he does show up, how are you going to know it's him? I mean, you can, again, assume that you're going to have a feeling that you know it's him, or you'll see him come from outer space, so that obviously it must be him. How are you going to know it's him? Well, the scriptures were purposely written so that you would know him. So the more you get into studying the scriptures, the more you will come to know all about him, because everybody prophesies about him. Everybody testifies about him. And so even Joseph Smith. And we're not talking about the first vision. We're talking about the second vision. This year is the last year of the latter days. And it just so happens to also coincide with the bicentennial year of the second vision that Joseph Smith has. And the Joseph Smith papers corrects some of the editings and redactions that have been made by Willard Richards primarily. It shows that Willard Richards had added in some stuff and changed some stuff. And so it's technically Nephi who appears to Joseph Smith. You can look it up in the Joseph Smith papers for yourself. And so yes, it's gold plates instead of golden. So it's kind of important that Joseph Smith, who is the founder of Mormonism, be given respect and not corrected. Only he can correct what he did. But regardless, in verse 40, he's been talking about signs of the latter days, referring to Old Testament scripture. And he then gets into the 11th chapter of Isaiah in verse 40, and then he quotes from the 3rd chapter of Acts, 22nd and 23rd verses, precisely as they stand in our New Testament. He said that that prophet was Christ. Oh, okay. So our Christ is in Acts. Let's find out. I'm on a CD-ROM program. So I can just click on it. For Moses truly said, oh, they have a link to Deuteronomy 18. So we'll check that in a minute. Maybe that's where Moses says it. Unto the fathers, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me. A man like Moses. That's interesting. Him shall ye hear in all things whatsoever he shall say unto you. And it shall come to pass that every soul which will not hear that prophet, which Joseph Smith says is the Christ, shall be destroyed from among the people. Okay, so now we got an urgent message here. We're in the latter days. It's the final year. And our Christ is going to come and tell us things that will save us from destruction. Joseph Smith says cut off. Even though he was saying it was precisely as it stands in our New Testament. And he says cut off rather than destroyed. So the Deuteronomy passage in 18:15 through 19. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee of thy brethren, like unto me, unto him you shall hearken. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just that they have require it of him rather than destroyed or cut off. Okay, so this is our Christ. So what's the source of this document? It's the Jews. Deuteronomy means repetition of the law. And since it's a repetition of the law, it's exactly the same as the law, and so we're actually reading the law, even though it's a copy of the law. A little strange, but nonetheless. So this means that this person, a man like Moses, is the Jewish Christ. This is the Christ of the Jews. It's from their Torah. It's from their law. This is their Christ. Moses is the ancient one. Man like Moses is the one they're looking for the latter days. Maybe we should tell them he's here or coming. That our church has got him because Joseph Smith said so. Wouldn't that be important? We can confirm that this is the Jewish Messiah. Messiah is the same as Christ. In Jeremiah chapter 23, starting in verse 5, Jeremiah says that this person will be a descendant of David. I will raise unto David a righteous branch. King shall reign and prosper. And then they get into the man like Moses. Verse 7, Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, The Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. That's Moses. But the Lord liveth, which brought up and led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country and from all countries whither I had driven them. That's the man like Moses. It's the gathering keys. And so we can go to Doctrine and Covenants to show that Joseph Smith likewise knew this. Section 110 with the Kirtland Temple vision. Verse 11. The heavens were again opened unto us, and Moses appeared before us, and committed unto us the keys of the gathering of Israel. So yeah, Joseph is consistent. The man like Moses is our Christ. And so then we can go to section 107 and see specifically the position of those keys of the man like Moses. In verse 91, and again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. Behold, there is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, revelator, translator, and prophet, having all the gifts of God which he bestows upon the head of the church. So President Russell M. Nelson is the man like Moses. And so we just finished celebrating Passover in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Jesus Christ is not the Christ of the Jews. So now we're in a conflict. Are we Christian or are we Jewish? I've been reading to you that we're Jewish, and I can keep going on. Because the Book of Mormon likewise. Let's do it. 2 Nephi chapter 3. The prophecy of Joseph Smith Jr. In verse 9. And Joseph Smith shall be great like unto Moses. Wait a minute. Joseph Smith is the man like Moses. Joseph Smith says that that's the Christ. Joseph Smith is the Christ of Mormons? But he's not Jesus. See where we're getting a little concerning here? Your spiritual witness is struggling. You're beginning to doubt. Disbelieve the Book of Mormon. Disbelieve Joseph Smith. Because your spiritual witness said it was Jesus. That the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true. And we're in the latter days. Having a correct understanding of who the Christ is kind of important. But he continues, whom, okay, the man like Moses, whom I've said I would raise up unto you to deliver my people, O house of Israel. Oh, so it's not specifically Joseph Smith, but Joseph Smith is a man like Moses. But he's not the Christ that Joseph Smith was talking about in verse 40. That's another person. And then it talks about Moses in verse 10. Whew. Can we still cling to Jesus? Section 103. Talking about the redemption of Zion, the millennial kingdom, with the Christ, which we're in the final year of the latter days. And so what are you going to do when you see him? What are you going to say when you see him? Do you know who he'll be when you see him? Do you know the scriptures to know him so that you will not be deceived by a false Christ? Verse 16. Therefore I will raise up unto my people a man who shall lead them, my people, like as Moses led the children of Israel. He's going to be a Mormon. Did that just blow your mind? It's not Jesus. The learning of the Jews is not Jesus. It is not Christian. So when you learn about the history of the formation of Christianity by Roman Emperor Constantine in 325 CE, you learn that they also created Jesus as the Christ. Now go back to the first vision. Reread verse 19 again. Anti-Semitism is what's being referred to as an abomination. And so the need for the man like Moses, who will be a Mormon, who will lead Mormons, is to lead them out of bondage. So is Joseph Smith a true prophet? Are you in bondage? Is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints the great and abominable? Verse 19, you read it? Church? The church of anti-Semitism? Did Brigham Young replace Joseph Smith's man like Moses Christ with Jesus Christ? Yeah, because the Joseph Smith Papers tells us for the visionary accounts that Willard Richards put in the name of the church, Jesus Christ. It was the Church of Latter-day Saints. That Joseph Smith and the administration unanimously agreed to change it to from the Church of Christ. Church of Christ in 6 April 1830, and then 1834 to the Church of Latter-day Saints. So what happened with verse or chapter or section 115? Why is it said that Joseph Smith single-handedly, when prior to, he had 6 people agree to be a part of the Church of Christ, and then the leadership unanimously voted to change the name? Why then would Joseph Smith have sole authority to change the name in section 115 without sole or without full leadership unanimous vote? Who was the one who wrote 115? George, huh? He was a Danite. Who were the Danites? They were the missionaries. They were the ones going around telling everybody, telling converts, and those who didn't join, that it's the Church of Jesus Christ. That Jesus is the Christ. And thus the need for Joseph in 1838 to do his visionary accounts. But that's probably a little too deep, because you have to actually do the study and research for that information. So your Christ is a Mormon. Your spiritual witness is saying this is wrong. It's not what I've felt when you prayed to find out if Jesus is the Christ. But Jesus is not a Christ. He's a false Christ, created by Roman Emperor Constantine. Of which Brigham Young and his followers replaced with Joseph Smith. I already know what you're choosing. Because we can go to numerous scriptures that prophesy about how Mormons will treat their Christ. And it's not good. So I already know your answer to what you will do and what you will say to your Christ. Because inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. All the comments, all the thumbs down that you have sent me is how you treat your Christ. You have denied him. You have rejected him. You have scolded him. You have falsely accused him. You have mocked him. You have insulted him. You seek to find fault with him. And instead you replace him with an idol god who is not here and will not come. Because he doesn't exist. Hope you can live with that. But hope you can live with knowing that you're worshiping a false God, Christ, rather than a man like Joseph Smith, whom you also deny. When you replace Joseph Smith as being Christian rather than Jewish, when you replace Joseph Smith's Christ as Jesus rather than the man like Moses who will be a Mormon, when you say that the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus rather than 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2, we are told, "Yea, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians." You deny the Book of Mormon when you say it's another testament of Jesus Christ. Because the learning of the Jews is a manner of prophesying, 2 Nephi chapter 25 verse 1, and it's a book of revelation of the latter days. Mormon chapter 8 verse 33. And so Nephi, not a literal history person. He's a symbolic code for the Mormon man like Moses. Who appeared to Joseph Smith in the vision. And so, even though they're talking about a historical event of the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, it's code, symbolic code for the beginning of the latter days. We know this because Lehi's dream He sees a sign in the heavens. That sign in the heavens is a star date. And it's the same star date given in Revelation chapter 12. Because the Joseph Smith translation also confirms the Book of Mormon in connection with the Joseph Smith translation, or the Revelation chapter 12. Moves verse 5 to verse 3 to be a part of the sign that everybody talks about. It's symbolically coded as the birth of Christ, which is the start of the ministry of the latter days. And this is why I know we're in the latter days. Because the date is the 23rd of September 2017. The Christ is here. The Christ has been speaking with you. And you've chosen not to hearken to him. Because you believe in Jesus. And so, yes, again, I know how you will treat your Christ when he comes. Because he's come. And I have seen how you would treat me for talking about him. And that's the sad reality.